Two neat siblings, Sora and Shiro, made up the most feared team of pro gamers in the world, named Blank. After they managed to beat God himself in a game of chess, they got sent to a world where their gaming skills would be needed to conquer it. A character named Queen had been engaged in a tournament of power with 4 characters from a team called Blank. As they fought, Queen wondered how these 4 players had managed to defeat 1,200 other players. She didn't know that these players were absolutely cracked at that game. She used a hack that allowed her to continuously cast powerful spells. But despite her efforts, Blank's team dodged her attacks and defeated her. Another gamer suggested that Blank might have been using cheats to stay undefeated in over 280 online games. Meanwhile, the 2 characters named Sora and Shiro were in their room. Each of them had been controlling 2 of Blank's characters, with Shiro, the reigning queen of multitasking, even using her feet to play because she was so hungry she could eat Snorlax himself. After 5 straight days of gaming like caffeine-fueled zombies, Shiro handed her controls over to Sora, who continued the game with the kind of focus you'd expect from a protagonist in a shonen anime. Suddenly, they received an email from an unknown sender, asking if they believed they had been born in the wrong world. Sora clicked the link in the email, which led to a chess game. At first, they thought they were playing against a computer, but Sora realized the moves didn't seem computer-generated, so they worked together to win the match. After winning, they received another email asking their thoughts on the world, to which they responded that life was like a crappy game. The sender then inquired how they would feel about a world where everything was decided by games. Sora replied that if such a world existed, they had indeed been born in the wrong world. And just like that, their screens went all wonky, like they were in a magical Portal episode. And they found themselves plummeting from the sky into a new world called Disboard. It's as if the Matrix and a fantasy RPG had a baby. And Tet, the god of this world, was there to welcome them. As they fell through the sky, Tet explained that in this world, everything, people's lives, national borders, was decided by games according to 10 pledges that he had created. Just as Sora and Shiro nearly hit the ground, Tet finished explaining the last pledge and disappeared, leaving the siblings to explore this new world like they had just spawned in Minecraft. Later, after winning a game against a group of homies, Sora and Shiro learned about the history of Disboard from them. The men had lost their birthday suit disguises in the game, but one of them asked if they could at least have some fun, hinting they had bet more than they could afford. Sora quoted one of the 10 pledges and left with Shiro, heading to Elkia, the capital city of Imanity. In Elkia, a gambling tournament of power was held to choose the next gambling Hokage. As dictated by the previous king's will, Stephanie Dola, the last king's granddaughter, and Clammy Zell were competing in a poker game. A woman explained the tournament to Sora and Shiro and mentioned Stephanie's participation. Sora then taunted the woman into a poker game, betting their lives against her money. Sora won the game with a royal straight flush and took her gold like Swiper the Fox, the Olympic version. When she asked who they were, Sora simply said he was an outsider. As they walked away, Shiro pointed out that Sora had cheated, but Sora dismissed it, saying it didn't matter since they hadn't been caught. Sora then negotiated with an innkeeper, securing 4 nights of stay with just 1 gold coin. When asked for a name, Sora told the innkeeper to leave it blank. As they left, Sora and Shiro noticed that Clammy was cheating, but couldn't figure out how. Sora whispered this to Stephanie and then headed to their room. They checked what they still had from their old world, and Sora reflected on how most people would try to return home after being transported to another world, but he questioned why. Later on, Stephanie arrived at their room, asking if she could come in. Sora decided to spice things up with Stephanie by challenging her to a high-stakes game of rock, paper, scissors. The catch was that he would only pick paper. If Sora won, he'd get a small favor from her. If Stephanie won, she'd get a juicy hint about Clammy's cheating ways. Stephanie, channeling her inner overthinker, ended up losing the game. Sora, with a cheeky grin, claimed his prize. Stephanie had to fall in love with him. Because why not add some romantic comedy to the mix? Sora then asked Shiro if this had been a clever move, explaining that it would allow him to visit the palace and access all of her belongings. Shiro pointed out that he could have simply asked her for her stuff directly. Realizing his mistake, Sora admitted that his subconscious desire to not be a sad virgin boy had clouded his judgment. Meanwhile, Stephanie, struggling not to fall in love with Sora due to the pledge they made, began banging her head against the wall. Shiro teased Sora by pushing him into Stephanie, causing him to grab her massive melons. Overwhelmed with joy, the cultured kind, Stephanie eventually snapped out of it and kicked him out of the room. Outside, Sora had a mental breakdown, declaring that he never wanted to touch another girl again. Shiro, also upset, rambled about not wanting Sora to leave her. When Stephanie opened the door fully, Sora and Shiro saw each other, immediately hugged, and Stephanie concluded that they had a couple loose screws. Later, while in the bath with Shiro, Sora explained why they kept Mr. Steve around and tried to get Stephanie to show him her massive milk melons by asking her to pick something up. Instead, Shiro swooped in and picked it up herself, exposing her elbow pit in a way that could only be described as anime cleavage 101. After receiving some clothes, while Stephanie was left wrapped in a bedsheet like a draped mummy, she offered to make tea. As she prepared it, she daydreamed about marrying Sora due to the pledges, causing concern among the maids, who probably thought they'd walked into a soap opera. When she returned with the tea and cookies, she tried to resist Sora's charm and infinite gamer boy Riz. She found Sora and Shiro on the balcony, discussing how humanity was the lowest ranked race due to their low magic affinity. They recalled seeing a girl use magic in a bar, and then decided to visit the library. At the library, Shiro quickly mastered the humanity language like a prodigious student in an isekai anime, and Sora encouraged her to continue. Stephanie admired their problem-solving abilities, teamwork, and intelligence, thinking they might be the ones to save Elkia. Sora asked why she wanted to be a king, and Stephanie replied that she wanted to prove her grandfather wasn't a fool. In the hallway, they encountered Clammy. Seeing Stephanie in rags, Clammy returned the clothes she had worn in their game, but dropped them before Stephanie could take them. Clammy's insult was like a final boss's taunt. When Stephanie began to cry, Sora told her not to prove Clammy right and handed the clothes back to Clammy, saying she had won them fair and square, for now. Clammy then remarked that Stephanie had found some fools. As Sora talked with Shiro, she noted that he was enjoying himself, and he agreed. saying it was better than their old world. Sora reassured Stephanie that they would prove her grandfather wasn't a fool. And as they walked down the hall, he made a note on his phone that he was going to become king. It was the coronation day, and Clammy was about to be crowned king, as she had defeated every opponent she had faced in the tournament. When the announcer asked if anyone wanted to challenge her, Sora busted in and interrupted the coronation like an angry ex-boyfriend, arguing that someone involved in a scheme with the elves shouldn't be allowed to become the ruler. In response, Clammy made fun of Stephanie, saying that she couldn't beat her, so she had to send her servant like some kind of backup Pokemon. Clammy let Sora challenge her to a poker game. Clammy agreed, but Sora insisted that Clammy couldn't rely on her elf partner for help. Shiro pointed out the person in the stands who seemed to be cosplaying Assassin's Creed. One of the girls pulled down their hood and revealed that she was actually an elf, to everyone's surprise. Clammy had denied having any alliance with the elves and proposed they play a different game without any outside assistance. Sora pointed out that the tournament rules were full of loopholes. They might as well have been Swiss cheese. He had accused Clammy of planning to use undetectable magic to cheat, assuming that Sora might have help from another species. He suggested that the game would be designed not to be obviously rigged to avoid suspicion. Despite this, Sora and his sister were determined not to lose. Clammy then revealed to a private soldier that she had allied with the Elven Guard to protect humanity under their care. Think of it like forming a team with the elves from Lord of the Rings, but with more sparkle and less walking. However, Sora refused to back out of the challenge, and Clammy led them to a cathedral where the next game was chess, but with a twist. Because apparently, regular chess wasn't enough of a plot twist. This time, the pieces had their own will. Shiro started the game, but Sora, ever the plot device, declared they'd switch players mid-game. It quickly became clear that the chess pieces moved based on the player's leadership abilities. This meant they could move beyond their usual limits, or even ignore commands, causing Shiro's pieces to go rogue faster than a character in a mecha anime rebelling against their pilot. Sora, channeling his inner motivational speaker, gave a speech that would put Naruto's Tak no Jutsu to shame. His chess pieces, now pumped up like they'd just finished a sports anime training montage, started to turn the tide. Clammy, not one to be outdone, used elf magic to boost her pieces' morale. Imagine casting a spell that's basically like giving them a Red Bull. Despite this setback, Sora used his dating sim experience to rizz up the enemy queen and ultimately persuade her to join his side, giving his team a chance to recover. After Shiro's epic motivational speech, which would have made even the most hardened isekai protagonist weep, Sora managed to defeat Clammy in a battle so cinematic that chess pieces literally wept. With Clammy out of the picture, it was time for the coronation. But here's where the real fun began. Only one person could be king, and Shiro and Sora were both as stubborn as a certain tsundere protagonist. Shiro refused to let Sora be king, fearing he might start a harem, a valid concern given his track record. Sora, on the other hand, refused to let Shiro take the throne. It was like a real-life battle of wits, but with more game playing and less tsundere catfights. This sparked a battle between the two, where they competed in 500 rounds of various games, resulting in 158 wins each. The plot armor was equally shared. Later, while playing cards, they realized that Commandment 7 didn't actually state there could only be one representative. As a result, both Sora and Shiro ended up becoming joint rulers like pair of kings. The two of them solved the nation's issues by having the ministers play a game of rock, paper, scissors, with the condition that they must lose on purpose. The prize for winning was that the ministers were no longer allowed to conspire against them. Sora gave an inspiring speech that belittles talk no jutsu once more, acknowledging both the strengths and weaknesses of humanity. During the speech, the duo received the race piece, signifying them as the official representatives of their race. They concluded their speech with a bold declaration, announcing war against every country in the world. Sora seems to have been inspired by the wrong set of people. When Sora and Shiro declared war, Stephanie freaked out, worried that other countries would drop bombs on them right away. But Sora and Shiro, known together as Blank, calmed her down, saying they had a plan. They explained that the other nations would start suspecting each other, trying to figure out who might be secretly helping humanity. This would stop them from attacking right away. As they were reading a book about the Flugel, a race living in Phantasma, Avantium, they discovered that the Flugel had an endless desire for knowledge. Sora wondered if he could use knowledge from his old world to win them over. Before he could think more about it, the god Tet suddenly showed up. Tet asked what they thought of this world. Sora said it was perfect, and then asked if winning simple games could be enough to become a god. Tet explained that to challenge a god, they would first have to defeat all the other races. With this new goal in mind, Blank decided to conquer the world. While they were deep in thought, Stephanie burst in and found them hiding in a weird-looking room after reading for a while.